Hello and welcome to the Outdoorsy Educator podcast, a place for conversation about travel, adventure, life lessons, and making the most out of each and every day. I'm your host, Alasdair Green, and each week I will have a conversation with someone who will not only inspire us all, but give us an insight into living life to its fullest. But before we get started, a quick word from our sponsor, Whole Earth Provision Company. Since 1970, Whole Earth Provision Company has been the Texas outfitter for side quests big and small. Whether you're gearing up for the open road, chasing a trailhead, or hunting for that just right gift, they have got you covered. Think durable clothing, shoes that will actually go the distance, gear that's road trip ready, and books, puzzles, and toys that will spark wonder at every age. You'll find Whole Earth in Dallas, Austin, Houston, and San Antonio, or anytime online at wholeearthprovision.com. And hey, because you're rolling with the Outdoorsy Educator podcast, here's a little extra love. Use the code OutdoorssyEDU for 20% off your next adventure at Whole Earth. And on this week's episode of the Outdoorsy Educator podcast, we have Aimee Frazier. Aimee, how are you today?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. We connected through a mutual friend, Andy Neal. Many of you will know Andy Films and Hikes, but I'm really looking forward to finding out more about what you do, Aimee. But first of all, why don't you just tell us a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, so I am in Portland, Oregon, and I own a private practice called Portland Hiking Therapy, where I am a mental health therapist, an LPC, and I conduct the majority of my sessions outside hiking while doing mental health therapy. And it's unique, it's a little bit different. We're often here in Portland, it rains like 9 months out of the year. Today's a sunny day, but most of the time it's raining. And so it's really different. We have a focus on nature connection through our sessions, which the research is showing more and more positive impacts on mental health for
Right.
spending time in nature and physical movement. And so we're using those things to our advantage while we're doing elements of traditional therapy and ecotherapy while we're out in the forest.
That was the thing that jumped out at me when I had a look at your Instagram profile initially was how do you blend those two worlds? Because in my head they're quite separate, but I'm also imagining they're not the sort of traditional counseling and then this outdoor therapy. How do you combine those two worlds?
That's a great question. I think, when we usually start our sessions, people are driving into the trailhead from traffic and from the city. And
Right.
so we often start our sessions by doing some type of meditation. There's a log not too far down the trail where we'll sit and just notice the shifts in our bodies as our nervous system reacts to our environment. And typically, this is like, oh, like I can feel the muscle tension shifting, or I'm connecting with bird song, and my nervous system appreciates that. I feel a sense of safety, or I feel like I can slow down, or I feel like I can breathe for the first time in a long time. And so just noticing that contrast is kind of the starting point. And then from there, once we get walking and talking, that's where maybe some of the more traditional elements of therapy might come in of, hey, let's reframe a thought, or let's come up with a small step for this next week that pushes you out of your comfort zone a little bit. Things like that you might
Right.
in an office.
You've sort of answered the next question that was just coming into my mind is, you mentioned a brief meditation sort of before the hike. Um, Hiking therapy could just be let's go for a walk, but obviously there's a lot more to it than that. You do some meditation. What are the other sort of ingredients of going for a sort of mental health hike with you?
Mm. It really depends on the person, but some of the
Okay.
other like techniques we might use would be like expressive metaphors. So let's find something in nature on
Okay.
the side of the trail that represents your relationship with your mom. And this could be a tree that's cracked
Right.
all over, or maybe it's I don't know, a pile of horse poo, or just
Right. Right.
different things that could symbolize. And for some people, it's easier to project an emotion or a story or an experience onto something in nature than it is to talk about it directly. And so that can kind of crack the door open and let the ego step aside so we can explore a little bit more in depth that way.
Hmm.
Um, so there's that piece, or we could explore how different seasons impact different emotional states. Like, hey, every fall I can feel this depression setting in, or every holiday, this family pattern repeats. And so we can do some type of like eco-seasonal mapping, or, just different things that help us relate to nature and also help us do some internal process work.
That sounds really interesting. I've got so many thoughts and questions going through my head, but how did you get into this from a personal point of view? Obviously, you're a licensed counselor, but did you enjoy hiking and then you thought, how can we combine this? Or did you have some sort of mentor or inspiration in this field?
That's a good question. I've always loved the outdoors, and I was a cross-country runner in high school, and my coach would take us out to different trails and different lakes. And so I feel like that was a huge opportunity to begin feeling safe and comfortable outside. And I know not everyone has those types of experiences or have the privileges to feel safe outdoors. So that was kind of like
Absolutely.
the doors cracking open. And then when I was in college, I got the opportunity to guide for a nonprofit where we took
Ah,
teenagers whitewater rafting and rock climbing, and we would do challenge courses, and we would live outside the vast majority of the summer alongside these groups. And I got to witness how transformational these experiences were for them. So they were sharing stories or stepping out of their comfort zone or developing their leadership ability, connecting with people in new ways through these adventure-based experiences. So very much like it's experiential education, experiential learning that was taking place. And that
mhm.
really, it was so beautiful and awe-inspiring to not only get to facilitate these experiences, but also myself as a facilitator be transformed through the process of supporting others in the outdoors. So I knew if there was ever a chance in the future that actually paid money that would allow me
Right.
to integrate the outdoors as a part of the transformative process for people, that I wanted to move in that direction. And I spent a decade in higher education, um, mostly in like advising, recruiting type roles, and also teaching. I taught a hiking and backpacking class. Um, but came to realize after 10 years in that field, like, hey, I think I'm actually supposed to be a therapist. And got really
Right.
lucky that I was able to find a supervisor that supported outdoor work. He specializes in ecotherapy, and the rest was kind of history.
So, I mean, that's the most Portland thing you could say that you taught hiking and backpacking in higher ed. I think that's just
Yes.
fantastic.
I think it's
Um,
the best class out there. I think everyone should
oh,
take
without a
it.
doubt, without a doubt. So, is there a sort of a trend or a movement towards this in the counseling and therapy world? Are people seeing the data? They're seeing that this is really a beneficial thing for their clients to do.
I think so. I think there was some hesitancy pre-pandemic
Hmm.
because there is additional physical liability. We're out and we're moving, and we have to be really careful with things like confidentiality and best practices. But I think the pandemic fast-tracked walk and talk therapy as a viable option because it was more accessible to meet a client outdoors than it was to risk getting COVID being inside a small
Of
office
course.
closed. And so that
Yes.
like really ballooned the interest in this field. And even though now things have shifted, I think there's a lot of therapists who are recognizing my mental health feels better. I feel less burdened at the end of the day. I'm having less vicarious trauma from the stories that we're witnessing and supporting people through. And so I think it's only expanding from here. And there's more resources now. There's books on how to integrate walk and talk therapy. The American Psychological Association just came out with a best practices article that I got to be a part of. And so now I think more psychologists, psychiatrists, mental health therapists are going to feel a lot more comfortable moving in that direction.
Yeah, just from my very limited perspective, I follow a lot of people in the outdoor industry, things like that. And there does seem to be definitely a movement of combining these fields. And I suppose it will just continue to grow the more data, the more research people do. And I shared with you before we came on the air many years ago, I went to therapy, and I remember my initial hesitation was I'm going to be sitting on a couch, sitting opposite somebody in a clinical setting, and we're just going to be staring at each other, and it's going to be very awkward and difficult. Now,
Yeah.
it wasn't like that, of course. It was a warm, welcoming place. but the thought of having something to do while you're talking is very appealing to me and seems to make it just more welcoming and accessible.
Yeah, I think there's a good part of the population that doesn't necessarily want traditional sit on a couch, direct eye contact therapy. They want movement or something that feels natural or already a part of their maybe identity. And definitely certain
Yes.
populations that really seek me and my practice out specifically for that reason. So yeah, I don't think it would be, for every single person out there, but
Right.
for a lot of people, it makes therapy more accessible.
Yeah, I think so. Certainly for me, like I said, less intimidating. Um, I think. I suppose it's the same if you just needed to catch up with a friend, going and doing something with them, and then you can do that thing together while you're talking. I don't know. It just seems like a wonderful, wonderful thing, and it reminds me of forest bathing, other sort of therapeutic uses, that people do in the outside outdoors, which is something that I haven't done at all, but is really interesting to me, and I'd like to find out more.
Yeah,
Um,
I think there's a lot of elements that a lot of therapists
mhm.
integrate, pulling from the research from forest bathing.
Right, and this combining what I assume are sort of maybe perhaps newer methods in the counselling field with these traditional, let's just go for a walk outdoors. The word has escaped me, but combining the old and the new just seems like a really good idea.
Yeah, and I think with AI coming out and these digital platforms, therapists are going to need to innovate and offer things in really like novel or engaging ways that like AI isn't going to be able to keep up with. And so I think this will continue to expand as therapists recognize that we have some competition, unfortunately, and connecting with nature and being a part of this like ecosystem that we've always existed within, but sometimes fail to recognize, is a really powerful tool that we don't utilize quite enough.
I think you're right. I was actually listening to a different podcast about something else altogether earlier today, and they were discussing whether this sort of very young generation or teenagers these days are going to be perhaps the generation that pushes back against a lot of technology. And
Mm.
they were talking about there's been a slight increase in flip phone sales and
Yeah.
people, there's a slight trend of people removing apps from their phone and just giving a gentle nudge back to the fast-paced world and technology. And it was a casual conversation of whether this could turn into a wave pushing back and getting back to nature or not. Will this just be a small thing? But I don't know. To me, there's something there.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that idea. And I think it's a really important and empowering step that people can set these boundaries and limitations with technology or access to the media because those can have a really profound impact on people's sense of well-being and safety and security within the world. And so yeah, I'm excited for the new generation and to see how that plays out.
Yes, yeah, it plays out. It was I was at the gym a couple of months ago, and I just had one of those moments where the light bulb went off, and I go to a Planet Fitness, which most people be familiar with, all the machines, and then they've got a line of televisions with all the different channels.
Yep.
And there was a television news channel that's more left leaning, and then one that was more right leaning on two televisions side by side, telling the same story. And I was just blown away, like just looking at the verbiage that is used. And I was like, this is just not healthy at all to consume either of those for me at this point in my life.
Yeah.
It just that was as I suppose many of us have a moment in our lives where we step back, and that was certainly mine. And I'm sure you have talked and dealt with people that have had those kind of moments.
Yeah. Yeah, a whole lot. And it's
Mhm.
so important that we can get away from some of the toxic or difficult elements of our culture and reconnect with ourselves and the land and like for some people even a sense of spirituality, being outside. It can really
Right.
pull us out of our own minds or our own stories as we're
Hmm.
immersed in like the bigger landscape of mountains that are millions of years old, and recognizing like can bring about a lot of existential reflections for some people to recognize and put in perspective just different things that we might experience on the day to day that are normalized in our culture but aren't necessarily healthy.
Right. And that's something I've found. I can think of a particular moment. It was a year. I was just about a year ago. I went and did the New Jersey section of the Appalachian Trail, and you don't. I knew that I needed it, and I needed to just get away for a few days. And my in-laws live up there, and went and saw them, and then went hiking. This suddenly, when you really are without the phone at your fingertips and the bings and the emails and the this and the that, your mind really does just. It's like turning something that just allows it to decompress.
Mm.
And I was kind of unaware of it happening until it happened. I was like, I need it. I need this, and we all need this.
Right.
Yet we don't give ourselves enough time to just be. So I'm very excited about what you're doing. Is this kind of more? I hate the word trend, but I can't think of a better a movement. Is this sort of a local thing that you found in Portland? Is it more national or international? Have people reached out to you, or have you reached out to people around the world who are doing something similar?
I think there are a lot of places where like outdoor walk and talk or hiking therapy is prevalent. I think the East Coast actually has more, from what I understand with
Okay,
the national conferences that I attend. The East Coast, it's become normal a little bit quicker. There's, I think, maybe a bit fewer practicing that here in the Pacific Northwest, but I think that's changing. And I consult with a lot of therapists, and they're kind of on the brink of turning their practice into integrating walk and talk therapy. And so, yeah,
right.
I think we're catching up here on the West Coast. And then internationally, I think, yeah, there's people in like the UK and Australia, New Zealand, kind of all around the world that are taking interest or integrating nature in some way into their practices. Maybe not necessarily always walking and talking, but getting into like nature-based therapy or different modalities like that.
Yeah, it's just occurred to me, and I can't quite believe it's occurred to me right at this moment. But I work for a university where I'm a professor, and our chancellor, there's a day and a time every week where she says, "I'm going to be at this spot, and I'm going to walk." I can't remember if it's 1 mile, 2 miles. Anyone is welcome to come and join her,
Oh
and
wow, I love that.
just chit chat. There's no agenda. There's no. But you will know I'm going to be here at this. I think it's at one of our fountains. At the fountain at, let's just say, 10 o'clock on a Tuesday. I'm going to walk. Come join me. And it just occurred to me that she's literally doing the same thing, and we're in a fairly urban setting here, even though our campus is quite lush and green. But she's doing the same thing. But
Hmm.
she's just doing it in a where she can in the environment where we live and work.
Yeah, I love that. There's some really good research that shows how we bond socially through hiking itself, right? It removes some of these like relational inhibitions that we might have because
Right.
we're not making direct eye contact. We're navigating this shared experience. So we have to oftentimes like problem solve how we're going to get around this log, or we're going to choose this trail or that trail. And so
Right.
it builds these social relationships and enhances the building of these social relationships. And I love that. And I think that's like really unrecognized and really undervalued. And, I hope that people can take advantage of that, right? Maybe if you're a little more shy or introverted or socially anxious, like go for a hike with someone, invite them out, or join a hiking group because that's such an easy way of connecting compared to maybe, going out to coffee or something that feels a little more direct.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love it. I love this movement, this wave that's happening. So we've talked quite a bit about you as a counselor and what it's given you as a professional, but hiking, what's it given you on a personal level or the outdoors? How do you feel it's maybe changed you as a person?
Oh, I love this question. I wish I'd prepared more for this, but
Sorry. Yep,
no,
throwing it at you.
I would say for me, there's a whole lot of personal growth that has taken place through different hikes. I'm also a mountaineer, so for me, climbing mountains it feels really empowering, and I think one of the ways it does that is through like almost like symbolically, like when we're hiking, when we're climbing a mountain, it's really challenging. The terrain is steep, there's a lot of uncertainty. While we want to be prepared, we can have some amount of control, but we have to be flexible. And so I think, being able to do a difficult hike or stand on top of a mountain summit, I, through that experience, like internalize this narrative of like, I can do difficult things. I can be resilient. I can get lost and still be okay and find my way. I can not be in full control of my environment, but be prepared and trained and confident that I can cope with things on the fly. And so I think a lot of these messages that we learn through the trials and challenges of hiking or climbing can become internalized to symbolize some type of like personal growth. So I think for me,
Yeah,
that's kind of it. And there's like spiritual layers in there or social layers. Like I think those are important too, but probably from like the personal growth standpoint, that's
yeah.
the piece that feels the most exciting for me.
And I love that. I mean, we've been talking, I don't know, 20 minutes, and already two or three times the metaphor, the relationship between the lives we're living and the natural world has come up time and time again.
Mm,
And I love that. I love that because it's something I think about a lot about situations. I've gotten lost when hiking and had to figure it out. And I think about that quite a bit when I get into situations in my day-to-day life, and I remind myself that while I've been through difficult situations, it's always worked out. Maybe not the way I thought, maybe
mm.
not how I planned, but I've always got there in the end.
Yeah.
And this the whatever situation or predicament I'm in at that moment is going to be the same. I'm
Mm.
going to get. It's going to be okay. So I love that. That's kind of been the theme of this conversation. What do you feel like as we kind of get towards the end here, wrapping up? Your long-term goals for hiking therapy. Where would you like to see it go the next sort of 5 years, 10 years, as this hopefully continues to grow?
That's a good question. There was an article recently, it was this week, just a few days ago, in the Washington Post about, I don't know, maybe you saw this. This woman, she's a teacher,
Hmm.
instead of doing detention, she offers detention hikes for students.
I saw it and reposted it. I may have stole it from you. I don't know.
Okay, yeah. So
Yes, yeah,
I saw
fascinating.
that, and I was so excited that she and others are witnessing students coming together, processing their experiences, and really actually enjoying these hikes and
Right.
um, experiencing like the personal growth that can come with that. Um, so as far as like the growth of hiking therapy, I don't know if that would even fall under the umbrella of hiking therapy, but it's people
Hmm.
supporting their well-being through getting out in nature and hiking. And I love seeing that. And I would love to see that normalized in like school systems and healthcare systems, like community groups that are going out to hike. I think nature connection is really important and something that we've really drifted far from the last 100 years or so. And I think there's so many benefits that we could gain from re-engaging with that. So yeah, I would love to see things like that happen in my own practice. I would love to be running more hiking groups.
Hmm.
Love to be working with different populations and helping train other therapists to be able to offer that as well and feel like they're competent and trained to do that in a way that's safe for everyone.
I love that. We've sort of lived slightly parallel lives in that regard. My last several years in the elementary public school setting, I was a behavior specialist.
Oh
And
yeah.
a lot of the time, had to intervene with children who are having behavior issues for whatever reason. And as long as the weather allowed, I hated sitting at, like across the desk from them. And again, this is harking back to talking about sitting down with the counselor and imagining it being clinical and awkward. We could just go outside and kind of sit across from each other, playing with sticks and leaves, and just have a gentle conversation. And it's still one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. And
Mm,
yet it's so simple. It's so simple, and that's what we kept coming back to. None of this is complicated or needing special equipment.
right.
Kids just want to be outside and in nature. So I love that we've seen sort of very similar things.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Have you heard of 1,000 hours outdoors?
I've heard of it, but that's about it. It's the
Yeah.
podcast, right? Is it?
Yeah, I think it's a podcast, it's a book. I think they
Yes.
have like a Facebook group, perhaps. I see things for them everywhere. But yeah, it's this
Right.
idea of families spending 1,000 hours outside per year and tracking their hours. And it's a lot of time, like camping trips and being
Yeah.
outside for hours every day. And just noticing the difference of the shift of the kids and the families and their bonding and their mental health, just all these things that can result from those experiences. And that's a movement I would love to continue to see, expanding.
Yeah, I've actually had somebody. I was at a conference this Monday and Tuesday, and on Monday, somebody came up to me because we know each other a little bit through our work, and she knows that I'm very enthusiastic about the outdoors, and she is really considering pulling her children out of public school for 1 year and traveling with them and homeschooling on the road, and was
Yeah.
asking my initial thoughts about it. I think her situation was she's married, her husband would stay home, and she was going to take off with the kids, and he'd fly and meet them. And but she just sort of said, "Is this a good idea or a terrible idea?" And I said, "Well, I'm biased. I think it's a tremendous idea. What an opportunity for your children and for you to have that." And she comes from a very academic family where you work and you work, and success is defined by the size of the house and the type of car. And she
Mhm.
wants to break away from that. But
Yeah.
and so it was a really interesting conversation, and I feel it's happening more and more.
Yeah, yeah, I think there are some people questioning some of the cultural narratives that we have,
Yes.
at least here in America, and
Yep.
trying to make space to live before they are retired and, maybe their ability level shifts. And so I think that's
Yes.
important. And I think people are, when we have the privilege or the stability to be able to do something like that, I think trying to make the most of it in most situations is really smart.
Yeah, I think so. And she, again, to get to know her, you wouldn't think that would be something. Um, she's great. She's 5 foot nothing and drives a massive Toyota Tundra and things like that. Like she's great and she loves being outside, but is just scared. I said, "You've got this. You can do it."
Mm.
So it's super exciting. But yeah, more and more people have come up to me and said, "How do we do this? How do we teach our children about the outdoors?" So hopefully the beginning of a trend. As we kind of wrap things up, I do always ask. I've got a list of questions. I'm going to choose three to ask you. I promise not trying to put you on the spot too much, but I'd love to know how you define success and how has it changed over the course of your career.
Oh, success.
Yeah, how do you view
For
success
myself
now?
or just in general?
Whatever comes to you.
Hmm. I would say success. And I'm gonna do this from the hat of a therapist because I work with
Yeah.
so many different people. So I'm gonna try to make this a general answer. It
Right.
is for the ability to live authentically according to one's values.
I love that.
And
Yes.
I know that's really broad, but
No.
everyone makes meaning of life and experiences so vastly differently. And so I think when we can be authentic and be in alignment with what is most fulfilling or gives us the best sense of purpose and alignment with the values that we hold, I think that's got to be it.
I, I love that. Purpose has been a big thing in my life, trying to find it. And,
Mm.
I could have done something else. I could have made more money. I could have this, but I know I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to. And that's a great, great feeling.
Yeah, I think yeah, I admire that. I admire
Mm.
when I can like chat with people and see that they are doing the one thing that they feel like they were created to do.
Hmm.
I get so excited to be around them
Yeah.
because there's no better spot in the world for them than right there.
Yeah. And how lucky am I? And then I feel the need to try and facilitate that for other people if I can,
Mm.
through my work in education, help them
Yeah.
find, their purpose. The second thing I'd like to ask you, if there's any book or piece of music that jumps out as being most impactful in your life.
Oh, the most impactful book or music. That's a great question. I'm
I
like
should
scanning my books right now. I've got books in my office.
I should have said books, music, or film if there was a film. But anything like that.
Most impactful. Oh, there's got to be one. There's a
Yeah.
lot. There's a lot of good books. I there's
Yeah.
a This one comes to mind because I read it recently and it shares the theme of education, which is a part of both of our worlds. So I
Hmm.
believe it's called Educated. Have you read that one?
I've not. No.
It is so fascinating and it was really popular a few years ago. It's this woman who was raised very isolated in Idaho. She was homeschooled her whole life, and then she got into college and broke free from a lot of difficult elements of her life. So she's like has this like trauma piece that she's coming from and emerging out. And she went to school, I believe it was in the UK, a very prestigious school. I'm spacing on which one right now. Um, but then she became a professor, and it's it's really beautiful. So I'm going to say that one.
Somebody has told me about that book before because there's little bits of the beginning of the story I'm familiar with. So I think somebody's told me a little bit about the trauma this lady went through, and the situation she grew up in. It sounded terrible, but I've not read it. So that now that you're the second person, that has to go on the list of books to
Yeah,
read.
check it out. I think you'll enjoy it a lot. Yeah,
Okay.
the power of education to transform her and her life and facilitate her healing. It's really beautiful.
I love it. And my final question for you is if you could go for a hike with 10 miles with anybody in the world, dead or alive, somebody you know or don't know, who would you like to go hiking for 10 miles with?
Oh, wow.
No, sorry.
Uh, the whole history of all of humans. That is a great question. That's a lot of pressure to think of the perfect person.
It is. I do
Hmm.
always tell people if there are significant others or spouses in the picture, they're sort of excluded, so
Yeah,
nobody gets in trouble, you know?
I'm trying to like think back through history. Who would be so interesting to hike with? Hmm. I wonder if hiking with like this is like the therapist in me coming out.
Yeah.
If hiking with someone who was like a villain, like Hitler, like if there would have been any chance of transformation in that process that could have changed history. And it feels
Yeah.
weird to say that, but just out of curiosity, and it probably wouldn't change anything. I feel like, that's got to be a personality thing. But um yeah,
Uh,
and it wouldn't be for like my own pleasure or goodness. It would just be to see if there could have been an impact that changed things significantly.
You're
So yeah.
not the first person to go down that route. I will
Oh,
say,
really?
another guest, and she clarified after we'd spoken off there, was like, I don't like the person, but there's an element of genius there that I wanted to I'd want to find out about. Um, it was very interesting. So it's fascinating that you went down a sort of similar path. Just it's not somebody you admired or loved. It'd be somebody looking through the therapist lens.
I think that's what like helpers and healers do. Like we want
Right.
to help and heal where we can and take away as much trauma as we can, if that's accessible, if it's possible.
I
So
love that.
I think that's kind of the lens through which I'm interpreting all of this.
Right. And if people would like to find out more about what you do, perhaps have some questions, how could they get hold of you?
Well, I'm on Instagram, Portland Hiking Therapy. My website is also the same name, Portland Hiking Therapy. And I just started a Psychology Today blog today, so that's on.
Hey,
And if you want to read about hiking and mental health, that is now out there.
fantastic. Well, Aimee, I cannot thank you enough. Thank you so much for spending this time with me.
Yes, thank you so much. I feel honored to be here.
Thank you again to this week's guest, and I hope today's episode was as enjoyable for you as it was for me, and perhaps even inspired your next adventure. If you did enjoy the show, please be sure to subscribe, leave a review, or follow us wherever you get your podcasts. You can find more information at theoutdoorseyeducator.com or follow us on Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook. Until next time, thank you so much for listening to the Outdoorsy Educator podcast.